Meat is one of the oldest technology upgrades the human body ever adopted. Long before supermarkets, long before nutrition labels, long before anyone argued online about macros, there was a fire, a sharp stone, and the unmistakable smell of protein hitting heat. For hundreds of thousands of years, meat wasn't a trend. It was a foundation. It was how humans built brains, built babies, built strength, and built the resilience that let us spread across the planet. And yet today, walk into almost any conversation about health, and someone will still whisper the warning, "Isn't meat dangerous?" That fear usually traces back to two old villains, cholesterol and saturated fat, ideas that were pushed hard, repeated endlessly, and then quietly complicated by decades of research. But myths don't die just because the science gets smarter. Myths die when people stop repeating them. So today we're going to do something practical. We're going to talk about meat, the real kind, and I'll give you 10 of the healthiest options, ranked from great to absolute nutritional powerhouse. One quick note, this is education, not medical advice. If you have conditions, medications, or unique lab results, use this as a guide and make decisions with your clinician. Alright, hello health champions, let's talk about the meats that actually deserve a seat at your table. Number 10 is chicken thighs. Yes, thighs, not breasts. When most people hear healthy chicken, they imagine a dry, sad, boneless, skinless breast that tastes like punishment. But if we're talking nutrition and satisfaction, dark meat wins. First, quality matters. Chicken is one of the most variable meats on earth depending on how it's raised. Best is pasture-raised, birds that go outside, move, scratch, and eat what chickens are built to eat. Bugs, grass, seeds, real life. Better is organic, but organic feed doesn't guarantee a natural lifestyle. Worst is conventional, crowded, indoor, fast-grown, and fed the cheapest inputs possible. Why does that matter? Because the fat profile shifts. The worse the feed, the more omega-6 fats tend to rise. And while omega-6 isn't evil, too much of it, especially with low omega-3, can tilt the inflammation balance in the wrong direction. Now why thighs? Because thigh meat is higher in nutrients like zinc and iron. It contains more collagen-supporting amino acids, and it's a better source of glycine, an amino acid many people don't get enough of. Plus, thighs carry more fat, and fat isn't just calories. Fat helps you absorb vitamins A, D, E, and K, the fat-soluble vitamins. If someone lives on ultra-lean meats and low-fat everything, bile flow and absorption can suffer. And honestly, the biggest reason I choose dark meat is simple. It's juicy and delicious, which is a nutritional advantage nobody talks about. The healthiest diet is the one you can actually enjoy enough to stick with. So why is chicken only number 10? Because compared to what's coming, chicken is good, but not the most nutrient-dense, and even pasture-raised chicken tends to carry more omega-6 than ruminant meats or fatty fish. Still, it's affordable, accessible, and a solid option for variety. Number 9 is turkey, and once again, dark meat wins. Turkey is the quiet cousin of chicken, similar but often raised slightly better, and its advantage is its B vitamin profile, particularly B6 and niacin B3. These vitamins support amino acid metabolism, neurotransmitter production, and energy production in the mitochondria. In plain language, they help turn food into fuel and support brain chemistry. Why isn't turkey in the top 5? Because overall, it's usually lower in mineral density than the heavy hitters, especially compared to ruminants, and the fat profile still isn't as ideal as grass-fed animals. Turkey is a strong yes, just not the king. Number 8 is pork, and pork is tricky. It can be amazing, or it can be industrialized into something that barely resembles what your body recognizes as food. If you can find pasture-raised pork or wild boar, pork has a real superpower. It's one of the richest sources of vitamin B, thiamine. Thiamine supports glucose metabolism, nerve signaling, and mitochondrial ATP production. Translation: it helps your body handle carbs and run electricity through your nervous system properly. So why isn't pork higher? Because quality pork is hard to find. Most pork people eat comes from animals fed grain and byproducts, which creates a less favorable fat profile, and if you're not sourcing carefully, pork can be more inflammatory compared to what's at the top of this list. And you'll notice I'm not obsessing over protein quality, because animal proteins are consistently high quality. Beef, pork, poultry, fish, they're all complete proteins with essential amino acids. The real differences come from micronutrients, fat quality, and how the animal lived and what it ate. That's where the ranking lies. Number 7 is venison and wild game, and wild game solves one of the biggest problems in modern meat: the environment the animal lived in. If it's truly wild, it grew up in a natural habitat, moved constantly, ate what its biology demanded, and didn't spend its life inside a system designed to maximize cheap calories. Wild game is typically high in zinc, iron, and phosphorus, and much lower in inflammatory fats, with omega-3 to omega-6 ratios often far better than industrial meats. So why isn't it in the top 5? Because it's usually extremely lean. Lean meat is great, but too lean can become a metabolic mismatch. You often need to add fat to make it a complete meal. Olive oil, butter, cream, tallow, a sauce that turns dry protein into a real dish. Also, availability is limited and it can be expensive. Powerful, but not always practical. Number 6 is lamb, the underrated champion. Lamb is one of the easiest wins in the meat aisle because it's often grass-fed by default. That means better fat quality, a healthier omega-3 to omega-6 balance, and more beneficial compounds like CLA associated with antioxidant effects. Lamb is also rich in zinc, which matters for immune function, hormone signaling, and recovery, and it can be both delicious and affordable. So why isn't it higher? Because the top 5 brings something uniquely potent, especially omega-3 density and organ meat micronutrient power, but lamb is absolutely a staple. Now, before we hit the top 5, we need to clear the fog, because people have been taught to fear meat like it's a loaded weapon, and the fear almost always comes down to cholesterol and saturated fat. For most of human history, meat wasn't controversial. Then heart disease rose, and humans did what humans always do. We looked for a single villain. Researchers examined arterial plaques and noticed cholesterol present, and then the leap happened. Cholesterol is in plaques, therefore eating cholesterol causes plaques, therefore cholesterol in food is dangerous. That idea became cultural law. The number 300 milligrams per day got repeated like scripture, and eggs got dragged into the courtroom and declared guilty by association. But research began showing something inconvenient. For most people, dietary cholesterol does not reliably predict blood cholesterol, and it certainly doesn't operate as a simple eat cholesterol, clog arteries pipeline. Your body makes cholesterol because it needs cholesterol for hormones, vitamin D pathways, cell membranes, bile acids, brain function. It's not a toxin, it's a tool. Over time, major dietary guidelines even acknowledged that cholesterol isn't a nutrient of concern for overconsumption for the general population, and yet old ideas cling to packaging and labels long after they have loosened their grip on the evidence. Then the spotlight shifted to saturated fat, and this is where the story gets more nuanced. Saturated fat can raise LDL in some people, but LDL isn't one thing. It has patterns and particle sizes and contexts. In many cases, saturated fat increases larger, less dense particles, especially when someone is metabolically healthy. The situation becomes more concerning when saturated fat is combined with insulin resistance, chronic inflammation, oxidative stress, ultra-processed foods, and refined sugars and starches. In other words, saturated fat in a background of junk can behave differently than saturated fat inside real food. And there's another layer, the gut microbiome. Some people respond differently because their gut environment is different. If someone already has gut issues, a low-fiber, ultra-processed diet plus lots of saturated fat can create a different inflammatory picture than the same fat intake in a whole food diet with diverse fiber. So the takeaway isn't saturated fat is magic or saturated fat is poison. The takeaway is context matters, metabolic health matters, and food quality matters. And if someone changes their diet and their labs move the wrong way, especially LDL particle counts or inflammation markers, then it's smart to adjust, often by adding more monounsaturated fats like olive oil and improving fiber diversity. Now let's go to the top 5. Number 5 is wild salmon, omega-3 royalty. Wild salmon is one of the most efficient delivery systems for EPA and DHA, the long-chain omega-3s your brain and body crave, and most people don't get enough. Wild salmon also contains astaxanthin, a potent antioxidant pigment that helps protect the fats inside the fish and may support oxidative balance. Wild salmon can be a little more expensive, but it's widely available. And even when you can't get wild, farm-raised salmon is still often better than most processed options, though wild tends to have a stronger omega-3 profile. Number 4 is sardines, the tiny fish with huge benefits. Sardines are rich in EPA and DHA, but they come with extra advantages. They're caught young, low on the food chain, and generally accumulate far less mercury than large, long-lived fish. And if you eat canned sardines with the bones, you get extra calcium and phosphorus too. Plus, they're one of the most budget-friendly nutrient bombs you can buy. One strong recommendation: choose sardines packed in olive oil rather than soybean oil. Number 3 is grass-fed, grass-finished beef, the foundation. Beef is one of the most nutrient-dense foods available, especially from grass-fed animals. It provides highly bioavailable hemi-iron, plenty of zinc for endocrine and immune function, vitamin B12 for nerve integrity and red blood cell production, and a better omega-3 to omega-6 balance than grain-fed beef, plus meaningful CLA. Grain-fed beef is still real food, but the fat profile is less favorable. So if you can choose grass-finished, do it. And here's what many people miss. Human physiology evolved with ruminant meat as a staple, and properly sourced red meat can be deeply supportive for strength, recovery, and micronutrient sufficiency. Number 2 is liver, the micronutrient titan. Liver is almost unfair. It's arguably one of the most nutrient-dense foods humans can eat. Beef liver and chicken liver are both powerful, and liver contains retinol, preformed vitamin A that's ready to use, folate in its natural form, vitamin B12 and B6, choline, and copper. Long before supplements existed, liver was used as a traditional remedy for fatigue and anemia-like symptoms because it worked. People didn't know the biochemical explanation, they just saw outcomes. Because it's so potent, liver isn't something most people need daily, and many do well with smaller amounts a couple times per week depending on their needs. Number 1 is heart, the mitochondria's best friend. Heart takes the top spot for one major reason: CoQ10, deeply involved in mitochondrial energy production, how your cells generate usable fuel. Your heart muscle is one of the most energy-demanding tissues in the body, so it's naturally rich in compounds that support energy metabolism. Heart also contains taurine, which supports nervous system and cardiovascular regulation, along with strong levels of iron and zinc, and a nutrient profile that supports cellular energy efficiency. There's something poetic about it. A food that can support energy production comes from the organ built to beat non-stop for a lifetime. Now, a little perspective perspective, this ranking isn't a law of nature. It's not carved into stone. It's a practical opinion based on nutrient density, fat quality, and overall impact, and all 10 of these are healthy choices. The real win is variety. Different micronutrients, different fats, different culinary experiences, and different budgets. And this matters most when you're eating out, because restaurants rarely serve wild salmon or grass-finished beef heart. Most salmon is farmed and most beef is grain-fed. But here's the key. Even those versions are still usually vastly better than ultra-processed meals, refined carbs, and foods fried in industrial seed oils. So if you're at a restaurant and the menu gives you salmon and vegetables versus mac and cheese and a basket of fried starch, you already know the smarter move. It's all relative. When you can choose the best quality, choose it. When you can't, choose the best option available, and don't let perfection become the reason you do nothing. Because health isn't built by one perfect meal. It's built by repeating good choices until they become normal. If you enjoyed this video, you're going to love the next one. And if you want to master health by understanding how the body really works, subscribe, hit the bell, turn on notifications, and I'll see you in the next life-saving video.